Okay. Nice silence. I don't say anything. I'm afraid. Okay, so my purpose is to construct an example. So first, all I will explain today is joint work with Yves Benoit. I could say as usual. And my purpose is to construct an example where a Furstenberg measure is absolutely continuous. And first I must explain what Furstenberg measure is. And it turns out that it is a measure on the Furstenberg boundary. So really, I'm right to be here. And so it is related to product of random matrices. So I will fix some D, and I will look at random walks on the linear group, the full linear group. So I look at this group, and I take mu, which will be a probability measure on, so I will denote it by G, on G. So this is a random matrix acting on RG, on the linear space RG. And there is an assumption which I will always make in all the talk. So I will assume that, so I will denote by gamma mu, this will be the sub-semigroup spanned by the support of my measure, and I want my measure not to leave, not to be too degenerated with respect to the algebraic properties of the matrices. And I will assume that gamma mu acts strongly, irreducibly on RD, which means that no finite union of subspaces is gamma mu invariant. So what happens if this is the case? If you have a finite union of subspaces which is actually invariant, it means that you exchange such a union of subspaces. So you can, in fact, you have to restrict the study. You have to forget about RD to look at what happens. And here you see what you have is that the finite union is invariant. So your Markov chains exchange the guys. So you look at the first time starting from V1. You look at the first time your Markov chain is back in V1. And then you study it inside V1. So this is very... you make some small algebraic reduction, and you always are brought back to this case. So in fact, this is natural to forget about this kind of pathologies. And also, I will make, so there are two assumptions which are standard. And the second assumption is that gamma mu contains a proximal matrix. So what is a proximal matrix? This is a matrix which is conjugate to someone of this form. So you have a block matrix. Lambda is equal, so the modulus of lambda is equal to the spectral radius of G. So that is the modulus of lambda is maximal among the moduli of eigenvalues of G. And here, on this block here, the spectral radius is smaller than the one of G. That is, you can cut the space in two, and everything, as soon as you leave a hyperplane, the asymptotic behavior of the orbits of the power of G are governed by the rate lambda. And if it is not the case, if your subsemigroup does not contain a matrix of this form, you look at the least proximal dimension of an element of the subsemigroup. That is, the least multiplicity of eigenvalues of maximal modulus. So you got among all guys in the group, you got a number R, which is called the proximal dimension. And if you have R that is larger than 1, then it means that you are not working in the good space. And you replace your space by the R exterior power of RD. And in this linear space, your group contains the proximal element. So usually, when you read a text about product of random matrices, you have these two assumptions at the beginning. And I want to emphasize the fact that these are no assumptions, because you can always bring the situation back to somewhere where they happen. They are satisfied. Okay? So these are not really assumptions. And now, when they are satisfied, so nevertheless, in general, if I have mu, that is a probability measure on GLD, I can associate to it a Markov chain on the projective space. So I have GLD which acts on the projective space, which is a very nice compact space. And in general, if I have a probability measure on a group and the group acts on a space, there is a Markov chain on the space. And what is a Markov chain? I start from a point X, I pick a random G which is distributed with this law, and I jump to Gx. So this is a Markov chain, and the Markov chain is represented by an operator acting on continuous functions on the space. And here the operator, it is defined as P mu of x being the integral over G, the acting group, of phi of Gx d mu of G. And under the assumptions I mentioned, there is a theorem, so which was first proved by Furstenberg and then extended by Goldscheid and Margulis. Maybe here it's just Furstenberg. The version I will write, maybe it's just Furstenberg. That P mu, so the adjoint of P mu, so P mu acts on continuous functions, so the adjoint on P mu acts on measures. So P mu, the adjoint, preserves a unique probability measure on the projective space. So, again, there are assumptions on mu. That is, mu, the subgroup spanned by the support contains the proximal matrix, and it acts strongly reducibly on RD. Under these assumptions, you got a measure. And now the question is, can this measure be absolutely continuous with respect to Lebesgue measure? Here, PD, this is a manifold, this is a differentiable manifold, so it has a Lebesgue class, and I'm asking whether the measure can belong to the Lebesgue class. Of course, there is a trivial case, which is a case where mu has a density. So if mu has a density with respect to R measure on GLD or on SLD, then convolution will regularize and you will get an absolutely continuous law. So now I will be interested in discrete measures. So for discrete measures, there is an example, which is again due to Furstenberg. If there is a measure, if you fix gamma inside SLD, which is a co-compact lattice, or even a lattice, there is mu, there exists some mu, such that the support of mu is gamma, so which implies at once that you have, that my assumptions of strongly reducibility and proximality are satisfied. And so I really not, and the stationary measure, so it is called the stationary measure on PD minus 1 is SOD invariant. So SOD acts transitively on lines. So this is a homogeneous space of a compact space. It admits a unique invariant measure, which is, of course, it is a Lebesgue measure. It has a Lebesgue class. And this is just, here it is this space admits a two-fold covering, which is a sphere, and it is just the round measure on the sphere that you project in this space. This is no mysterious measure, the SOD invariant measure in this case. And what I'm saying is that you can find a measure whose support is the full group, the full lattice, and whose stationary measure is the Lebesgue measure. And but it turns out that you cannot do such an example with a finitely supported measure in this setting. With for this example, the measure has necessarily infinite support. So I will prove I'll do justice. So in fact, this is just a remark somehow. This talk that you can find an example. So this is a little ambitious to state a remark as a theorem. And so for NED, there exists a finitely supported mu. So again, which satisfies all my assumptions, my two assumptions, it is proximality and strong irreducibility, such that the Furstenberg measure on projective space is absolutely continuous. And in fact, I will prove. So you can find an example. So when d equal 2, this was already known. So there is a symmetric, non-symmetric example, which was constructed by Barani. I forgot one of the name. I don't know if I wrote it in my notes. Polycott and Simon. And this is a non-constructive one. That is, it is constructed by, it is an almost sure statement. You have parameters, and you prove that on a set of full measures of the parameters, the stationary measure is absolutely continuous. And the method is the one that appears in the theorem by Solomiac, I think, that was cited by Varju in his previous talk. That is, you have parameters, you have maps that have contraction properties, you have parameters, and you prove that on a large set of parameters, your invariant measure is absolutely continuous. So this is a non-constructive proof, and the example is non-symmetric, and there is a constructive, an explicit measure constructed by Bourgain, and it is symmetric. And this is a recent work, and actually I will use this because now I will assume that D is at least 3. So I won't prove the case of SL2, and you will see why. I hope that it will be clear at the end of the talk why, using the method I will use, I cannot prove the case of SL2. Like I have to assume D to be at least 3. It has full support. In fact, the measure I will construct, gamma mu is dense in SLD, in my case. So the measure has full support. It's far away for the lattice case. So this is really cheating somehow, because I don't like dense groups. Okay. So, yes, it's a lattice, but the point is that the measure, I think it's more or less a conjecture that you cannot do it for finitely generated. In this case, so it's not very clear. I think there are conjectures about whether you can do it for I don't know. Okay, but the only examples that are known in the lattice case are examples where the measure has infinite support. Where was I? Yes. So now I will. So in fact, this is not really a talk. This is a course about operator theory, because now I will introduce tools which are very classical. And, maybe you know them. If you know them, you stop me. Tools for functional analysis. And so this is a tool when you have if you have E, that is a Banach space. And I will apply this to the case where E is the L2 of the SOD invariant measure of PD minus 1. Okay, so if you have E, which is a Banach space, and if you have T, which is a bounded operator on E, so P, it will be the action, the Markov operator associated to the measure, then there is a tool. You have T has a spectral radius. It has a spectrum. This is the spectrum of T. And rho of T, it has a spectral radius, which is the supremum of the moduli of elements of the spectrum. And sometimes it is very nice to know that this spectral radius is actually an eigenvalue of T. And it turns out that there is a wonderful tool for proving this. And the tool is to introduce a new spectrum, which is called the essential spectrum. So sigma T, remember you, this is a set of lambda inside in C, such that lambda minus T is not invertible. And this is a non-empty compact subset of C as soon as, and this is always defined as soon as you have an element in a Banach algebra. And here the Banach algebra under consideration, it is the algebra of bounded endomorphisms of E. So now I will introduce a new Banach algebra, so it's not very new. So I will take the quotient of this algebra here by a closed ideal. And if I do this, I get a new Banach algebra. So it is called the Calkin algebra. And it is B of E. And I take the quotient by the ideal of compact operators. So I've got a new Banach algebra. I look at the image of my bounded operator in this quotient algebra. I have an element of a Banach algebra. It has a spectrum, and it has a spectral radius. So the spectrum, it is denoted by sigma E of T. It is the essential spectrum. So if you like the vocabulary of operator theory, it is a set of lambda such that lambda minus T is not a Fredholm operator. Exactly. Because to be invertible in this algebra means to be a Fredholm operator. Okay? So sigma E of T is the essential spectrum, and rho E of T is the essential spectral radius. And here comes a wonder of functional analysis. So let me draw a picture. I have an operator. So I draw, this is a complex plane. And in the complex plane, I have two circles. I have the circle with radius, the essential spectral radius. So somewhere inside this disk lies the essential spectrum. And now, sometimes the spectral radius, it is larger than the essential spectral radius. It is always, you have always the non-proper inequality, and sometimes it is proper, which means that out of this essential disk, you see some eigenvalues, some spectral values. And it turns out that all the spectral values that are out of the essential disk are eigenvalues. So this is the proposition. So it is in every serious course of functional analysis that if you take lambda, which belongs to the spectrum of T, and the modulus of lambda is larger than the essential spectral radius, then lambda is an eigenvalue with finite multiplicity. Which means, more precisely, that your Banach space splits. You can write your Banach space as a direct sum of two closed subspaces, which are T invariant, and F is finite dimensional, and so now, when you look at the action of T on F, you just have a finite dimensional endomorphism of a vector space. So the spectrum on F of T is just lambda. So you have finite multiplicity, you have a Jordan block, okay, so, a sum of Jordan blocks, maybe several Jordan blocks, and on G, and the spectrum in G of T is exactly the spectrum of T deprived of lambda. So you take out lambda, okay, and what remains is a finite codimensional subspace. Okay? And in particular, a corollary, a trivial corollary of this proposition. Sorry? Lambda just, yes, the eigenvalues which are out of the essential spectral radius, essential disk, they are isolated in the spectrum. This is why you just have the picture is this picture. You have the essential disk, and you have a countable number of points here, which accumulate on this disk. And each is an eigenvalue with finite multiplicity. So the structure of the spectrum out of the essential spectrum is very simple. Here, of course, you don't know what you have. It can be continuous, etc. And the corollary of this is in particular that the dimension of the eigenspace of the kernel of T minus lambda under the same assumptions, it is the same as the dimension of the kernel of the adjoint operator minus lambda. Just because now you know that if you have this structure, necessarily you can match the eigenvalues in the dual space. T star, by T star I mean that I have an operator. As soon as you have an operator on the Banach space, you have an operator on its adjoint on its dual space. Okay, so T star for me this is the adjoint operator which acts on the space of linear functionals. And just by elementary linear algebra, from this decomposition, you get this property. So here is the sketch of proof for proving that Furstenberg measure in certain case is absolutely continuous. I will look. So I have a measure mu on GLD. And now I will assume that it is finitely supported. Okay? So in particular, since every G inside, so the G group I denoted by G, okay, every G on G acts by composition on the L2 space of the projective space equipped with the probability measure ρ. This is the OD invariant measure, the round measure. This is just a quotient of the sphere. I take the round measure. Okay? So I have the OD invariant measure. So I have a wonderful L2 space. And if I fix G, I can define an operator, which is this. I send every function phi to phi composite with G. This is not a unitary operator. Okay? This measure is not invariant by the group. So it is not a unitary operator. Nevertheless, this element of the group, it acts on this differentiable manifold. Okay, and since it is C infinity, it has bounded Jacobian. So this is a bounded operator of this Hilbert space. Okay, Again, this is not a unitary operator. So I'm not doing what well-educated people should do. That is only looking at a unitary representation. Okay, this is not a unitary representation of the group. This is just an action of a group on a Banach space. But nevertheless, I can define my operator P mu. P mu phi of x. This is the average of this. It is integral over G of phi of gx in UG. And since it is defined as soon as a measure has compact support or as soon as it has sufficiently good moments. Okay? But in this case, it is just a finite sum because I assume that my measure was finitely supported. So in fact, this is a sum over a certain finite set, f, of mu of G, phi of G. This is just a finite composition, a finite convex combination of operators. And imagine, so we will state it as a lemma. It's a trivial lemma. Trivial lemma. There is no LaTeX command for trivial lemma. So, trivial lemma. Assume the essential spectral radius of P mu is smaller than 1, then the Furstenberg measure is absolutely continuous. So proof, trivial proof. You have P mu of 1 equal 1. This is a fundamental equality. And because it's a Markov operator. And so you know that the kernel of P mu minus 1 is different from 0. So you know that there exists, so the kernel, by my proposition, this eigenvalue has modulus larger than the essential spectral radius. So this kernel here is different from 0. And what is? So here I gave a formula for the operator. And what is the formula for the adjoint operator? This is exactly the adjoint of this operator on measures with L2 density. So I'm exactly proving that there exists a complex measure with L2 density, which is invariant by the action. So it's a complex measure, but it's an exercise. If you have a complex measure which is invariant by the adjoint of a Markov operator, then its total variation is invariant also. This is trivial. Okay, so I build the measure. So now what I have to do is just to build an example where this essential spectral radius is smaller than 1. And as I am a kind of a thief, I will steal the example. And I will use spectral gap in compact groups. So this will be the fact that such an example exists will be a direct consequence of examples of dense subgroups of compact groups which have a spectral gap. And let me remember you. So this was somehow implicitly mentioned in the talk by Perez yesterday. This phenomenon of dense subgroups of compact groups which have a spectral gap. Let me remember you what it is. So there was a small course in functional analysis. Now there is a small course in representation of compact groups. So now assume K is a compact group. And mu is a probability measure on K. Then again, you can define an operator. So there are several operators, and all are defined by the same letter in this talk. So P mu phi of x, because this is always the same. So it's the integral of phi of gx d mu of x, but now phi is a function from k to c, say. Phi is a complex function of k. And you can look at this, but now if you look at the action of L2 on L2 of K equips with a R measure, now it is an average of isometries. Okay? Because now you preserve. Now I'm acting on K, keep with it as measure, so I preserve the measure. Which means that I take an average of isometries so that if I have an invariant vector, it is invariant by everybody. Okay? So if by everybody in the support of the measure. So if gamma mu, now the subgroup spanned by the support is dense in K, then P mu has only constant functions as invariant functions. And now a question arises naturally, which is to know whether P mu can have a spectral radius. You look at now at its action is the set of functions with zero integral. Now there you don't have invariant functions, and you ask whether its spectral radius is smaller than 1 or not. And so for example, if mu has L1 density, this is the case. If mu has L1 density, this operator is compact, and so you know that maybe there can be a finite set of eigenvalues, but essentially you have a spectral gap. Okay? But you are interested in the case where your group is a continuous group, and your operator, your measure is finite, is finitely supported. And in this case, so if the group is abelian, you never have a spectral gap. Okay? But if the group is not, say abelian infinite, say if the group is not abelian, there are cases where there is a spectral gap. So it is a theorem which was proved by Margulis when D is larger than 5, and by Drinfeld, where D is 3 or 4. There exists, if K is SOD, which is a famous compact group, there exists finitely supported probability measure mu on SOD such that P mu has a spectral gap. So again, this means that when I look at the action of P mu on the space of a function with zero integral in L2, my operator has spectral radius smaller than 1. So since I'm French, I say strictly smaller than 1. Okay? It's proper. And so here I use a particular representation of the compact group on a particular Hilbert space, but it is well known, this is a Peter Weiss theorem, that every representation of K on every irreducible representation of K on a Hilbert space appears as a sub-representation here. So saying an equivalent statement is that saying that the operator has a spectral gap here is saying that as soon as K acts on a Hilbert space with no invariant function, the spectral radius of P mu is smaller than 1. This is the same statement, just by elementary representation theory of compact groups. Okay? So now I have my operator, and also which is given to me by this proposition. And this is why in the proof now I will assume that D is at least 3, because when D is 2, the group is SO2 here, which is abelian. And as I told you, there is never a spectral gap in abelian groups. It is an exercise. Okay? So necessarily, in the structure of what will come, I will use the fact that I am working in SGLD with D at least 3. And now here is the formula for the measure. It will be a very simple one. I should have denoted by sigma. Okay, so P sigma. So I will pick G in, say, SLD, but G does not belong to SOD. This exists. And I take sigma from the theorem here, and I define mu n as being sigma to the, I take the nth convolution power of sigma, I take the convolution product with 1/2 of the Dirac mass at G plus 1/2 of the Dirac mass at G minus 1, and I take again the nth convolution power. So this is just to ensure that sigma is symmetric, that mu n is symmetric. So here, of course, I can take sigma to be symmetric. So, and I can, but in fact, I don't care. Okay, the same proof. If you want mu to be symmetric, you write it this way, and else you just write it this way. Okay, and so in this case, what happens? What you see at once is that gamma mu is dense in SLD, because SOD is the maximal closed subgroup of SLD. So now, if you look at the support, the subgroup spanned by the support of mu n, it contains SOD, okay, and necessarily it is larger, so it is SLD. So it is strongly reducible and proximal, no problem. Okay, and but I know that it is dense. Yes, it is explicit, and there is a very explicit example due to Lubotsky, Phillips, and Sarnak. Yes. This is Bourgain and Gambier theorem. So, in fact, there is a conjecture that as soon as you span a dense subgroup, it has a spectral gap. So, but nevertheless, there are examples and very explicit examples. So here, yeah, you really can write and examples where you know the spectral radius by Lubotsky, Philippe, and Sarnak. You know the spectral radius, so you will see in the sequel. I will use that. What I will do works for a sufficiently large power of n, but in fact you can make n explicit if you want. So now what happens if I look? So I want to look at P mu n acting on the L2 of projective space equipped with the round measure, and I want to compute its essential spectral radius. And I want to prove that it is smaller than 1 for n large enough. So what happens is that P mu n is the product of 3 operators. So it's mu n is here. P sigma to the n times the operator associated to the measure 1/2 of delta G plus delta G minus 1. This is not convolution product. This is product of operators. That's very important. And times P sigma to the n. And what is the structure of P sigma to the n? You have a decomposition. So you act. Now here, this operator, this is just an action of the compact group. So it is an average of isometries. Okay? So I have my space L2 of projective space, and it splits as the sum. You have constant functions here, and here you have the function with zero integral. And what I'm saying is that P sigma, it preserves this line where it acts as identity, and here its spectral radius is smaller than 1, which means that its norm on its space goes to 0. So this operator, if I denote by Q the projection, the orthogonal projection to constants, I'm just saying that when I take P sigma to the n, it goes to Q in a very strong sense. That is, it goes to Q for the norm topology. That is, the norm of this difference goes to 0. This never happens usually when you have convergence of operators in ergodic theory, etc. You have weak convergence or strong convergence, but never in norm. Okay? But here, this is what happens. You have a convergence in norm. Okay? So this tells me, just by continuity for the norm of the product, that P mu n converges to Q time this operator P 1/2 of delta G plus delta minus 1, but I don't care for it, in fact, times Q, just by continuity. And this operator, it is a rank 1 operator. So it is compact. So this operator, it converges towards the compact operator. So by for the norm topology, which is a very strong topology, so this, just by continuity of the spectral radius, this essential spectral radius converges to 0. So for large n, it is smaller than 1. Okay. Citizen, thank you.
And what's the one-dimensional space?
So sorry?
This is activate projector. One-dimensional space.
This was yes. This one is just a rank 1 operator because you applied projection to constant functions, you multiply by something, but you reapply projections to constant functions. So this is just a multiple of Q, in fact. Okay, and so you know you have these powers, they converge to Q for the norm topology. So you know that P mu n converges to this product. So since it means that it converges to a compact operator. So its essential spectral radius converges to the essential spectral radius of a compact operator, which is 0. Just because the group is dense. The density, the support of the density is invariant by the subsemi group.
Is there any reason why you actually expect for, let's say, a lattice in a higher rank group that there wouldn't be a finitely supported measure on it?
Absolutely nothing about this. But I heard by talking with specialists, they said expect this, but I don't understand why. But okay.
Thank you.